Bigfoot, also known as Sasquatch, has been a topic of fascination for centuries. Sightings of large, hairy creatures roaming remote forests have inspired countless debates, documentaries, and even expeditions. But beyond the cryptozoological intrigue, some have wondered if there's a deeper, more ancient explanation for this creature. Could Bigfoot be connected to the biblical Nephilim?
In this video, pastor and apologist Grant Forrester and I are going to dive into a theological exploration of whether Bigfoot could be related to the Nephilim, the mysterious giants mentioned in Genesis 6. We'll examine this topic through the lens of ancient biblical theology, considering what the Bible and extra-biblical texts tell us about the nature of the Nephilim and other spiritual beings. I'm Kevin Laymon. I'm a pastor and Christian therapist. This is Veiled Kingdoms. Let's pierce the veil.
First, we need to understand who the Nephilim were. The Bible's first mention of the Nephilim occurs in Genesis 6, 1 through 4, where we read that the sons of God saw the daughters of men and took them as wives, resulting in the birth of the Nephilim. These beings were described as mighty men of old, men of renown, but who exactly were they?
The phrase, actually, sons of God, is often interpreted as referring to divine beings, spiritual entities who had some level of authority or presence in the divine council. These beings, in rebelling against God's order, crossed a boundary by having offspring with human women, producing the Nephilim.
The Nephilim, described as giants, were not just physically large, but were also symbols of chaos and rebellion. They represented a hybrid mixture of divine and human, a distortion of God's creation. So the text presents them as part of a larger pattern of spiritual rebellion that wreaked havoc on the earth, leading up to the earth's flood.
Now, fast forward to today. Cryptids like Bigfoot have captured the imaginations worldwide. People report sightings of large ape-like creatures living in remote areas, but no conclusive evidence has ever been found. For some, this mystery, I think, prompts a question: could Bigfoot be a remnant of the Nephilim?
So let's break down the speculation. According to some, the Nephilim survived the flood or reappeared afterward, and over time, they became the creatures we know today as Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Proponents of this theory suggest that as ancient giants were hidden or destroyed after their time, a few may have lingered in isolated places on the earth.
Yeah, the line of thinking often points to the fact that Bigfoot sightings occur in remote, forested areas, places where remnants of such ancient beings could theoretically hide without being discovered by modern civilization.
Yeah. And yeah, but is there any theological basis for connecting Bigfoot with the Nephilim? From a biblical and ancient Jewish theological perspective, the answer is far more complex. While the Nephilim are indeed mentioned in Genesis, later biblical texts such as Numbers 13:33, where the spies describe seeing the descendants of the Nephilim, okay? This provides more context. These beings were giants, and their presence was associated with supernatural rebellion against God.
Yeah, and ancient Jewish writings during the Second Temple period, including books like First Enoch, they elaborate on this idea. They describe the Nephilim and other hybrid beings in more detail. And by doing this, they emphasize the supernatural origins and their destructive influence on humanity.
And so these beings are often linked with corruption and chaos, and their ultimate judgment is going to be one of destruction. In fact, ancient theology makes it clear that such hybrid beings are seen as an abomination, destined for judgment by God. The New Testament, in places like 2 Peter 2:4 and Jude 1:6, refers to the rebellious angels being cast into chains of darkness awaiting judgment. This implies the Nephilim and their kind met their end and are not expected to roam the earth post-flood.
So how does this line up with Bigfoot? Theologically speaking, the Nephilim are a distinct category tied to spiritual rebellion in the ancient world, and their existence is limited to the pre-flood and possibly immediate post-flood era. There's no biblical or theological reason to believe that they survived or evolved into cryptid-like creatures like Bigfoot.
While the Bible and Second Temple Jewish writings describe spiritual and physical beings that once walked the earth, there's no continuation of that narrative into modern times. Instead, the biblical text seems clear that such beings were judged, wiped out, or otherwise confined.
Yeah, from a theological perspective, Bigfoot sightings and lore are most likely part of human fascination with the unknown rather than a continuation of biblical giants or Nephilim. It's important that we distinguish between myth, cryptozoological speculation, and what Scripture reveals about the nature of hybrid beings and their ultimate destiny.
And so in conclusion, while the Nephilim played a significant role in ancient biblical narratives, their existence was tied to specific events in the distant past, events that ended in their destruction. The theory that Bigfoot is a modern Nephilim may capture the imagination. I mean, it certainly captures mine, but it doesn't align with the biblical or theological understanding of who the Nephilim were and what happened to them.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the story of the Nephilim serves as a warning about rebellion against God and the consequences of spiritual and physical corruption. And so while Bigfoot remains a mystery, the Bible offers clarity on the fate of beings like the Nephilim, remnants of an ancient world, not creatures hiding in modern forests. And so I think what we want to gather from all of this is that when we take a concept or an idea like Bigfoot and we attribute it to the Nephilim, we're actually kind of diluting Scripture. We're diluting a race of beings that were put into Scripture and put into civilization for a very specific purpose, right? They are used to show spiritual rebellion against God. And so we don't really see that occurring with Bigfoot, right? Like Bigfoot's just this animal that lives out in the forest, but there's nothing about him or his character that seem to represent ultimate rebellion against God, which would take him out of that category of being a Nephilim.
Yeah, and besides, Bigfoot's a fey spirit anyway.
Oh, that's a teaser for another episode, huh? All right. Well, that's all we've got for today. If you've hung with us this far, we've got to assume this has been helpful to you. Please consider liking the video or dropping a subscribe to the channel. If you're new here, we have a ton of content for you to hang out and watch. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Grant, for being here.
Absolutely, brother.
And God bless.